Hello, I'm the Shadow Critic, and in this episode I'm asking the question, which game is better, Naruto Storm 4 or Dragon Ball FighterZ? We're going to be comparing and contrasting the games, looking at their respective strengths and weaknesses, to try and find out which game is superior. So let's start off this episode by looking at the character selection screens. There's a far wider choice of characters in Naruto Storm 4. The sheer amount of playable characters in Naruto Storm 4 is extremely impressive. They really try to fit everyone into this game. Like seriously, you can pick any character who happens to be your favourite from the anime, and it's very likely that they're going to be in this game. They really try to fit every character into this game. Programming the moves and fighting styles for this many characters must have been exhausting. The character selection screen for Dragon Ball FighterZ is tiny by comparison, and that's even if you have the DLC characters. Even with the DLC characters, it's still relatively tiny compared to the character selection screen of Naruto Storm 4. This one is a clear win for Naruto. Like seriously, just look how many characters there are in this thing. You know, in the original Mortal Kombat, there were like 6 characters you could choose from. To think that nowadays there are this many is crazy. Another thing to think about is that in both of these games, some of the characters have variations of themselves within the character selection screen. So for instance, you have Goku, you have Super Saiyan Goku, then you have Super Saiyan God Blue Goku, and then you have Ultra Instinct Goku. Now obviously everyone has their own personal preference for Goku's transformations, so it's good that we're given all of them as options to play. However, ultimately all of these characters still are Goku, which means that this already tiny character selection screen has 4 characters that are just variations of Goku. Now Naruto Storm 4 also has a lot of variations, but it has so many characters, even with the variation there's still loads of characters. Like I said, this is an easy win for Naruto Storm 4. Now let's talk about character powers. The attacks in Dragon Ball FighterZ are impressive, but the different character attacks and movesets can end up feeling kind of the same after a while. They sometimes feel like they're the same character, just with different models and attack colours. Most of the characters look pretty similar in their fighting styles, and it can end up feeling like you're just playing the same character over and over again. In Naruto Storm 4, the attacks are completely unique to each character. If you play as Naruto, in his basic fighting style, you can use his shadow clones. The way they incorporate the shadow clones into the fighting style is really imaginative. It's a really ingenious and creative way of doing it. I didn't know how they were going to have shadow clones in the game, but I have to say this was a really interesting and unique way of doing it. Now let's talk about character powers. The attacks in Dragon Ball FighterZ are impressive, but the different character attacks and movesets can end up feeling kind of the same. They sometimes feel like they're the same character, just with different models and attack colours. You see, there's not a lot of variation, it all looks kind of similar. Although I do like when they try and change it a bit and give the character more personality in their fighting style. For instance, check out Yamcha's fighting style. He's jumping around the screen like crazy. I love how energetic it is. He's all over the place. Playing him feels like playing a really individual character. But many of them just feel like the same character with different models, and the colour of the ki slightly changed. Unfortunately, Yamcha and Hit are the exceptions. Most of the characters look pretty similar in their fighting styles, and it can end up feeling like you're just playing the same character over and over again. Take for example Beerus. He's the god of destruction, so you think he would know how to fight and have a really cool and unique fighting style, but his combat movements are really underwhelming. One of them is just him slamming his head into the enemy. It's weird because Dragon Ball is a series known for its martial arts. The entire series was originally about learning martial arts and becoming stronger in order to fight in martial arts contests. So you would think that the game of the anime would have some of the best fighting styles in gaming history. However, unfortunately, all of the basic fighting style movements, such as the combos and the punches and kicks, are all just very visually bland and boring. In Naruto Storm 4, the fighting styles look really amazing. The characters are so energetic, performing huge, breathtaking attacks. The game developers also worked in a bunch of unique details for each fighting style. One of my favourite fighting styles is that of Kakashi. After performing his basic combo, he ends it by using his fire breath to blast the enemy. It's an excellent additional detail on an already awesome combo. It's these types of small details that push Storm 4 from being an awesome game to being a legendary game. Another one I really love is Naruto's fighting style and combo. At first, when I used the game, I immediately went to Naruto. I really wanted to see how they were going to incorporate his Shadow Clone Jutsu into the game. And I was really disappointed because I couldn't find it as a move. I thought they must have not included it because it would have been too hard to program into the game. However, when I began to use his combo, multiple versions of him appeared on screen, and I began to think the game was glitching. However, then I realised that the game developers had incorporated his Shadow Clone Jutsu into his fighting style and combo. It's such an awesome concept, and it looks really great. I was curious because I knew if they were going to use it, they would have to have multiple Naruto Shadow Clones on screen that would somehow have to be controlled by a single controller. So I didn't really see how that was going to be possible, but doing it this way, making the Shadow Clones part of his combo so that it's automatically controlled, but still possible for the player to use, makes way more sense. I really like how the individual Naruto clones help each other fight. Naruto even has a move where he throws his clones at people. It's a really visually interesting fighting style. Some of the combos get really creative. Compared to Storm 4, the fighting styles in Dragon Ball FighterZ just look kind of bland and lifeless. The winner of this part, by far, is Naruto Storm 4. Now let's talk about the speed of the gameplay. The speed of the gameplay and the character movements are also very important. In a fighting game, the gameplay needs to be fast and fluid without being too fast. In my opinion, Dragon Ball FighterZ has gameplay that's slightly too fast. The characters move around the screen so quickly, you can hardly keep track of where they are or what they're doing. And I often lose track of where they are completely, and it becomes extremely hard to see what's happening or to react to anything in time. Because they're moving so fast you almost can't keep track of them. How am I supposed to win this fight? I'm pressing buttons but the enemy is moving so fast the characters can't act in time. The enemies are attacking before the button inputs can even reach the character. As I said, the time window for the input space for commands is extremely small. You have to be very precise and quick when entering commands. But under this kind of pressure, fighting an enemy this fast feels impossible. Look, I enjoy difficult games. I actually like when a game gives me a challenge instead of just letting me win. I like to spend some time learning how to play efficiently. But in this game, the combination of command input time and the speed of character movements makes it almost impossible. The speed of the gameplay in Naruto Storm 4 is far superior to that of Dragon Ball FighterZ. For starters, the battlefields in Naruto Storm 4 are much larger, and the characters are not as fast. This gives you more time to strategize and create plans. You're also able to see what the enemy is doing and react to it, instead of like in Dragon Ball FighterZ, in which you're just button mashing in a desperate attempt to stay alive. These spacious battlefields and slower character movements make the game feel much more like a real battle than a struggle to mash as many buttons as possible. When playing Naruto Storm 4, I actually have time to think, watch what my enemy is doing, and come up with tactics. When playing Storm 4, I can look at the enemy's health, chakra gauge, and their substitution jutsu meter, which allows me to think about what moves I'm going to use next, and what plan I'll use in the battle. However, in Dragon Ball FighterZ, I never have the ability to come up with anything because the enemies are so fast and the key gauge is constantly charging because it's recharged when the enemy does damage to me, and due to the fact they're constantly speed blitzing me, they're constantly doing damage, so I don't have time to come up with anything. In summary, in Dragon Ball FighterZ, the gameplay and character movement speeds are so fast that I don't have time to create strategies or tactics. However, in Storm 4, I can create plans based on the enemy's health, chakra level, and substitution meter. However, the gameplay is still extremely fast, but unlike in Dragon Ball FighterZ, it's not annoyingly fast. In Naruto Storm 4, the character movement and gameplay speeds are far superior. The speed of these elements is flawlessly balanced. It all also allows for a perfect balance between the player's ability to think, strategize, and create tactics. Whenever I lose in Dragon Ball FighterZ, I feel like I was speed blitzed. But whenever I'm beaten in Naruto Storm 4, I feel like it's because I made a genuine mistake. It might be because I performed the move and left myself open at the wrong time, or because I created a bad plan, or because of some other flaw that was my fault. I never feel like I was just speed blitzed. Whenever I lose, I feel like it was my fault, not because I was speed blitzed. Now let's talk about the atmosphere of the games. What does playing the game actually feel like? Well, to me, Naruto Storm 4 is a more relaxed, chilled out gaming experience. There's more time to think, react and strategize. The slower gameplay and larger battlefield gives you thinking time, but also it isn't too easy as to be unenjoyable and boring. They really balanced making the game accessible to new players without making it easy and boring. In Dragon Ball FighterZ, I feel like I'm constantly under stress. The gameplay is so fast, I don't think I even really feel like I have time to think or react to what's going on. I feel like I'm just mashing buttons for my life. Now you might say that slower fights are unrealistic, and most street fights end in a few seconds. But look at professional boxing matches. They're not over in a few seconds, they can last for half an hour. And look at ancient battles, they could last for days at a time. Slower, more drawn-out battles are possible. As for the speed of the gameplay, I have to give it to Naruto. It really feels great to play, getting it fast but not too fast. It's entertaining and challenging, but unlike Dragon Ball FighterZ, it isn't overwhelming. Now let's talk about glitches. Naruto Storm 4 suffers from some very minor collision glitches. Occasionally an attack move will pass through a character, or a character will move through another character when they punch or kick them. However, these events are rare enough that they don't really impact the enjoyment of the game at all. The pathfinding for some of the attacks can also be glitchy at times. For instance, if you summon Naruto too late, he'll just run right past the enemy like an idiot. And if you use Haku's Ice Jutsu, in some battlefields too close to the corners, the jutsu will collide with the edge of the battlefield and be cancelled out by it. In these battlefields, you have to stay nearer the middle of the field to use it effectively. Young Naruto also has glitches because he has to charge his Rasengan. Oftentimes, by the time he's finished charging it, the enemy will have already moved, so he'll just run at nothing. Because Naruto Storm 4 has quite a few glitches, the winner for this one is Dragon Ball FighterZ. Now let's talk about the mechanical depth. Let's start off with combos. In Dragon Ball FighterZ, there's more options for advanced combos, but once you get into a combo, the battle can be over pretty fast. If you get trapped in a series of combos, the enemy can beat you in a flash. I've never been good at using combos, so for me it's just kind of annoying when the AI can just beat the hell out of you, taking a huge chunk of your life bar, and you can't do anything to escape. Naruto Storm 4 allows the characters to use the substitution jutsu and vanish out of combos. This is nice, as it makes the fights feel less one-sided and less easy to win by just spamming combos. However, it can also be annoying if you keep trying to do a combo several times in a fight and the enemy just keeps teleporting out. However, while it is difficult, you can use strategy to fight your opponents by monitoring the number of substitution jutsu bars they have left. It does add another interesting layer to the complexity of the game. Like I said, overall I really like that the characters have these substitution jutsu, because if you're like me, you're not very good at pulling off combos, and you always get trapped in combos from the enemy, so it's really nice to have an opportunity to vanish out, and not just get one hit killed. I can see less skilled or newer players really liking this aspect. So overall for this section, I definitely prefer Naruto Storm 4 with its substitution jutsu mechanic. Now let's talk about transformations. Dragon Ball FighterZ does have transformations, however they can only briefly be unlocked for certain moves, and once the move is over, the transformation ends. So when playing as Goku, you kind of just want to go Super Saiyan and stay that way for a while, just like in the Budokai games. But the transformation only lasts for a single move. This is really disappointing, because one of the coolest parts of Dragon Ball is the transformations. It's really sad to see that they only last for a single move. It really disappointed me when I played the game and realised it was programmed that way. In Naruto Storm 4, most of the characters have abilities in battle straight away, So for instance, they can just use powerful attacks straight away without having to transform. However, some powers like Kakashi's Sharingan are only unlocked when he's awakened. And if you haven't played the game, awakening a character is basically like when they transform in Dragon Ball. However, unlike in Dragon Ball, once the character is awakened, their power-up lasts for a pretty good amount of time relative to the power boost it gives you. So Kakashi's Sharingan actually gives him increased speed and a powerful lightning attack, and it lasts for a pretty good amount of time. Now in Naruto Storm 4, some of the power-ups are just really disappointing, like Haku's power-up. I was really disappointed because Haku was one of my favourite characters from the anime, so I wanted to see how powerful he would be with the awakening, because in the anime he's really powerful, but his power-up is really disappointing. He just creates mirrors, and it doesn't do anything. Like, you can't even do anything with the mirrors. I don't think he even receives a speed boost, which he should, because his entire thing is that he's fast in the anime. And it's the same with Kimimaro. His power-up also sucks. However, there are so many characters to choose from in Naruto Storm 4, you can forgive some of the characters having crappy transformations. Overall, by far I prefer the transformations in Naruto Storm 4. They last way longer and give you a massive power boost. I really like actually being able to play with the transformation instead of it only lasting for a single move. Whoever programmed it to last for only a single move in Dragon Ball FighterZ must have been a complete idiot. Why would you do that? I really can't understand. I know that you can play as various transformations in the game, like Goku Blue and Goku Ultra Instinct and Basic Goku, but still, the transformations are one of the most awesome parts of the anime. Why you wouldn't program that in the game as a playable feature, I don't know. I cannot understand why you wouldn't. I can't believe they actually made a Dragon Ball game in which you can't transform for more than a single move. How could you make a choice so colossally stupid? It's Dragon Ball! The transformations are one of the most famous aspects of the show. I hear they're making a new Dragon Ball game. It's going to be called Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. Well, that's good, because clearly zero goddamn effort was put into this game. I still can't believe it. A Dragon Ball game without transformations? Dragon Ball. More like dragon shit! So for transformations, I'm giving the win to Naruto Storm 4. Now let's talk about the teams and team battles. I like that in Dragon Ball FighterZ, you have to defeat the entire enemy team to win the battle. It feels more complete, whereas in Naruto Storm 4, you only have to defeat one member of the enemy team, and they all share a health bar. Another thing that annoys me about Dragon Ball FighterZ is that it's a game that has no block button. Instead, block is backspace. I always hate in games when they put block on backspace. It's extremely unintuitive. I just don't understand why you would make a directional key the block button. It's like if you put the attack button on the forwards direction, so every time you press forwards you would start attacking. People say that all real fighting games do this, but Mortal Kombat, the most popular fighting game of all time, has a block button. So if the most popular fighting game of all time has a block button, what does that tell you? It tells you that if you believe real fighting games don't have a block button, you're a dumbass. People counter-argue that not having a block button in a fighting game opens up more attack options. Okay then, you know what? Let's just get rid of block altogether. That would give everyone more attack options, right? Or let's just give block a limit. Let's make it so you can only block once every minute. Both of those options would create more attack options, but they're also fucking stupid. As is block on movement. Look, if your attack strategy only works on bastardized controls, then it doesn't make you skilled at gaming. It just means that you suck and need shitty game design to help you win. As I was saying, some morons argue that a block button removes certain attack options and makes gameplay less deep. But here's a solution to that. You can create a block button, then you make it so you can press left or right while holding block. And you also give the option to stand still and block, as well as the option to block while standing or crouching. Then you have all possible defensive options. You have movement while blocking, you have blocking while standing still, and you have blocking standing, crouching and jumping. You have every possible defensive option, which means all attack options will also be possible, depending on the type of block your opponent is using. So you can see that creating a block button would make it possible to use every single type of defensive movement and attack option. Now let's talk about the control scheme for the games. My complaint about the controls is this. The time window on the controls was extremely unforgiving. For many of the moves, if you missed by a frame, they wouldn't work. But the game is also extremely fast. The characters move extraordinarily quickly, such as the full screen dash attack or various energy blasts, each of which can cross the screen in only a couple of seconds. So on the one hand, the button input time windows is extremely short. You have to get it exactly right at the exact right moment. But the gameplay is so fast, and the characters can cross the screen using a dash, or shoot an energy blast across the screen in a couple of seconds, which means that already extremely small time window is actually microscopic. The characters can also shoot ki blasts, which makes it even harder. I just never felt like I could input a combo easily. I always felt like I was in a rush against a time window to input a combo correctly. But even when I beat the time window, I would just get dash attacked immediately, or blasted with ki. I never felt like I could enter a combo in a relaxed way. Like when I played Mortal Kombat 9, yes it was fast, and yes the combos sometimes got interrupted, but the time window was much more forgiving, and there were few moves that could instantly cross the screen, which meant that the already more lenient time window was actually even more relaxed than you would have thought. When I played Mortal Kombat, I felt challenged, but I felt that the challenge was fair. I never felt that I was trapped by the speed of the game. Look, I like a fast game, but with the time window on the control inputs, combined with the attack speed of the characters, you would need the Sharingan to play this game. I have to be honest, I really hated the control scheme of Dragon Ball FighterZ. Naruto Storm 4 uses auto controls, which can sometimes feel a bit unambitious. I'm not against auto combos, but it would have been nice to have some regular combo options in addition to the auto combos. You know, to have both. Nonetheless, the auto combo control scheme feels very fluid and removes all barriers between the player and the game. The control scheme of Dragon Ball FighterZ was extremely annoying because of the combination of the unforgiving button input time windows, the super fast gameplay, the full screen dash attacks, and the other instant full screen attack moves. It is extremely difficult to execute combos, and strategic gameplay is almost impossible. Even though Naruto Storm 4 has auto combos, and I would have liked some regular combos in the game, I still vastly prefer the controls of Naruto Storm 4. The control scheme of Dragon Ball FighterZ is just not intuitive. Playing the game feels very awkward and unpleasurable. It feels like you are constantly fighting against the control scheme, rather than working with it. This is due to the game's speed, the unforgiving button time input windows, and the instant full screen attack options. These kinds of controls disrupt the immersion between the player and the video game. When I was playing Storm 4, the controls were so fluid I could completely get lost in the battle. But when I play Dragon Ball FighterZ, I find myself constantly being broken out of the immersion, because I have to keep looking at the controller to find out what I'm doing wrong, and I'm constantly concerned about getting the button input time wrong. This stops me from getting immersed in the game. The controls in Dragon Ball FighterZ are too unintuitive, and I have to keep struggling to put the button inputs in correctly. And when I keep getting them wrong over and over again, it eventually breaks me out of the immersion of the game. After a while, it doesn't even feel like I'm playing a video game anymore. It just starts to feel like I'm doing some kind of annoying, repetitive task that I can't get. After a while, I can't enjoy the video game at all. I'm completely broken from the immersion, and I'm just annoyed. Controls like those in Dragon Ball FighterZ could work if the time window were more forgiving, or if the game was slower, or if there was less full screen attack options. I loved Mortal Kombat 9 because it had manual combos, but it also had normal gameplay speed, forgiving button input time windows, and very few instant full screen attacks. This meant you used regular combos, but it did not feel overwhelming or unplayable. In Mortal Kombat 9, the relaxed control scheme meant that you had more time to think, and therefore you could create and use tactics and strategies. Another good example is Guilty Gear Strive. The gameplay speed of that game is faster than Mortal Kombat 9. However, the button input time windows are more forgiving than Dragon Ball FighterZ, and there's fewer instant full screen dash movements, so the game is still extremely enjoyable, and you have more time to think about what you're going to do. While I would have liked to see some regular combo options in Naruto Storm 4, the larger battlefield, more forgiving button input time windows, and auto combo system combine to give you a lot of time to think and create tactics and strategies. The control system in Storm 4 allows the player to focus more on the actual battle elements, such as perfecting your reflexes, resource management, strategic planning, tactics, and mind games. The super fast gameplay and limited button input time windows of Dragon Ball FighterZ give you almost no time to think about anything. When I play Dragon Ball FighterZ, I feel like I'm having such a hard time with the controls. I don't have any time to react to anything, or plan out any attacks. Most of the time I just end up taking damage on purpose, so I can pull off even a single combo move. In Naruto Storm 4, the more intuitive control scheme, combined with the larger battle arena, allows you to pull off awesome split-second reaction movements. In Dragon Ball FighterZ, the game moves are so fast I can hardly react to anything, let alone pull off split-second reaction movements. The time windows for the button inputs are just not long enough for a game that has so many instant full-screen attack moves, such fast gameplay, and such small battle arenas. This one isn't difficult at all for me. When it comes to the control schemes, Naruto Storm 4 easily wins. When it comes to fighting games, I really love to have enough time to think and strategize about what I'm going to do. I think it's really important to be able to create tactics and play mind games. Games like Mortal Kombat 9, Guilty Gear Strive, and Naruto Storm 4 all give you sufficient time to be able to create tactics and strategies. They give you time to think. But Dragon Ball FighterZ just doesn't. There's just no time to think. It just feels like you're constantly getting speed blitzed. It feels like you can't think at all. You have to always act on reaction instead of thought. There's no time to make logical decisions or use rationality. You just have to use reactions alone. There's no time to make logical or rational decisions. There's no time to create tactics or strategies. There's no time to think. You just have to act on reactions alone. You're either constantly getting speed blitzed or constantly speed blitzing your opponent. For me, time to think is really, really important in a fighting game. And strategies, planning, and time to think just aren't elements in Dragon Ball FighterZ. Let's talk about the backgrounds now. A big part of video games are the graphics and the designs, so let's talk about the backgrounds of the various levels. But let's not concentrate purely on the visuals of the backgrounds. Let's also talk about the role the backgrounds play in the game. In Naruto Storm 4, the arena feels much more important because the environment you choose to play in makes an impact on the battle. In Dragon Ball FighterZ, the battlefield environment just feels like a background. They do all look nice, but there's no real difference between playing in any of the different arenas. None of them affect the gameplay. Therefore, the arenas just become backgrounds, as you don't really need to interact with them that much. But in Naruto Storm 4, because there's 3D spacing between opponents, the range and movement area feel much more important, and so the battlefield also feels like it has increased importance. Some battlefields restrict your movements because they're smaller, and some arenas have edges that an enemy or the player can be thrown off, while others don't. All of this impacts how the battle will transpire. If you're in a battlefield arena with an edge, then you've got to watch out for things like Naruto's Rasengan, because it can blast you into the wall, and if he does that enough times, you'll get thrown out of the arena. But other arenas don't have this. Therefore, the battlefields actually feel quite important, and have a large impact on the battle. Both the battlefields in Naruto Storm 4 and Dragon Ball FighterZ look really nice. Naruto Storm 4 has loads of options of where to fight. Some of them are really beautiful, like the snow arena. Dragon Ball FighterZ has less options of where to fight, but they all look really nice. I especially like how, at the end of the game, if you perform a really powerful attack, you can actually blow your opponent into the scenery. So if you're fighting in the arena where they have a giant computer in the background, you can actually perform a powerful attack and send your opponent flying into the screen. It looks awesome. There's also another one where you can punch your opponent into a volcano. It looks amazing. Naruto Storm 4 also has this. In the Leaf Village, you can blast your opponents into buildings, and the buildings collapse from the impact. It's really cool. So overall, they both have really nice backgrounds, graphically speaking. They both look great from a visual design point. However, if I had to give one the edge, I would probably have to give it to Naruto Storm 4, because in Naruto Storm 4, the battlefield actually affects the outcome of the battle. It actually impacts how the battle plays out. Whereas in Dragon Ball FighterZ, the background, while interactive and while you can destroy it and change it and it looks really cool, it is ultimately still just a background. It does have almost no impact on how the battle actually plays out. So I'm going to have to give the win to Naruto Storm 4. Now let's talk about battle immersion. I have to say, Dragon Ball FighterZ has some very good immersion. You can select a character and they'll give a quick line of dialogue that tells you something about who they are or what they want. And before the battle begins, the character will have a short exchange of dialogue. Sometimes the dialogue is extremely quick, and it's often repeated for each opponent, but sometimes if a character goes up against a particular character, they will have a unique interaction with them. This isn't really important for gameplay, and it doesn't really change anything, but it is nice to see some extra effort being put in by the game developers. Naruto Storm 4 doesn't have any unique lines of dialogue between the characters. It also doesn't have any unique dialogue for the selection screen, which makes it feel kind of lacking. After the battle is over, the winner will give some kind of closing line. Because a lot of fighting games nowadays have some kind of dialogue before and after the fights. The characters will say some line of dialogue. In Naruto Storm 4, they don't do that. No matter what opponent you're fighting, it's always pretty much the same. It would be nice to see some unique character interactions. Then again, I do like the running thing they do before the battle begins, so perhaps they would have to lose that if they had free battle dialogue. In Naruto Storm 4, they do have a closing line of dialogue, but they don't have any opening line of dialogue. The battle begins with a running start. However, they have some character dialogue within the battle itself. If you finish a battle with a super powerful attack, the character will give a statement just before the battle ends. So just before the enemy takes damage, the character will give some kind of dialogue. And sometimes if you choose a unique character combination, they'll actually give unique lines of dialogue. Like when you launch the final attack, just before the enemy takes damage, that makes the final move of the battle feel way more awesome. It's that last element that enhances the final closing scenes of the battle. As for who does it better, I can honestly say I think it's a draw. While both of these games insert lines of dialogue at different points in the game, they both feel pretty awesome. One of them does it before the battle, to amp up the feeling of the battle going into it, and one of them does it at the climax of the battle to make the ending feel awesome. They both have different takes on how to do it, but they both do it really well. I really like both of them, so I'm going to call it a draw. Like I said, this doesn't really matter or affect anything in the game itself. It's just nice to occasionally see the game developers putting in some extra effort, and it does help you get excited for the battle. Now we should talk about the movement controls. The movement in Naruto Storm 4 is really great. The characters are so easy to handle, but some of the movements are quite complex. For instance, many of them transverse the battlefield by doing flips or rolls. You might think that with such complex movements, the characters would be difficult to control and unwieldy. The characters feel so easy to control. When playing games, normally I tend to use more basic movements, because in some games using complex movements can feel awkward and difficult to control. But in Naruto Storm 4, I find myself jumping all over the battlefield, because it's just so easy. It's especially enjoyable to play as Kakashi, because he has all kinds of flips, and controlling him feels so buttery smooth and fluid. With the battlefield in 3D, it's so easy to jump around the enemy, quickly moving in and out of range for attacks. These controls are seriously excellent. The controls of Dragon Ball FighterZ are pretty average, but it doesn't feel as smooth as it does in Storm 4. Storm 4 wins. Now let's talk about strategy and technique in the game. Now this may shock some of you, but I would argue that playing Naruto Storm 4 actually requires more strategy and technique than Dragon Ball FighterZ. In Naruto Storm 4, the 3D battlefield with its open spaces and chakra gauge gives the game an extra layer of complexity. You're always looking for an opening or opportunity, carefully watching your opponent, waiting for them to make a mistake and start to run out of substitution jutsu and chakra. In Dragon Ball FighterZ, I always feel like I am constantly either speed blitzing someone or being speed blitzed. In Dragon Ball FighterZ, I feel like there's so much battle pressure that you just can't come up with strategies or tactics, because you're always either applying pressure to your opponent or they're applying pressure to you. There's never any time to think. So for strategy and technique, the win goes to Naruto Storm 4. Now let's talk about DLC. This is by far one of the worst things about Dragon Ball FighterZ. It really annoyed me. This game costs £15, which isn't too bad, but know this, you're playing a half-finished game. Many of the characters are not included. I wouldn't be so angry if they just had 1 or 2 DLC characters, that I would understand. As far as I'm concerned, that would be fine. If they only had 1 or 2 DLC characters and included the rest of them, as far as I'm concerned, that would be fine. But this game gives you a quarter of the cost, and the rest of them are DLC. That's just unforgivable. Like, look at all these characters. At first, only a quarter of them are playable. The rest of them are DLC. How the hell can you do that? How the hell can you sell a game and have so many characters be DLC? So many of these characters were DLC, it's unbelievable. And it's not even that they're particularly expensive, they're pretty cheap at like £1 each, but still, it's just so annoying that you can't just play a game anymore nowadays. That for some games, in order to enjoy them, you have to pay additional money to the money that you spend on the game. It's like, I just bought the game, I just want to play it, just let me enjoy it. I don't want to buy your shitty DLC. I don't want to think about DLC, just let me enjoy the game that I bought. The DLC in Dragon Ball FighterZ was completely out of control. I've never seen worse DLC in a game. It was astonishingly outrageous. I don't know how anyone can sell a game that's only half complete. Like I said, the DLC in Dragon Ball FighterZ is just unforgivable. As for Naruto Storm 4, I think it does have some DLC, but to be honest, there's so many characters in this thing that aren't DLC. I haven't even got around to unlocking all of them. I'm still just playing the basic characters they give you at the start of the game. There's just so many of them, and none of them are DLC. It's like the game developers who made Naruto Storm 4 looked at Dragon Ball FighterZ and saw all of the DLC and were like, we're going to do the complete opposite of this bullshit. We're just going to put every character in the anime in here for free. The win obviously goes to Naruto Storm 4. Seriously, whoever made half the content for Dragon Ball FighterZ DLC needs to go straight to hell. Let's talk about the 3D. As you can already probably tell, I really like the 3D in Naruto Storm 4. It's been so long since I played a 3D fighting game, I didn't think it would feel this good. Dragon Ball FighterZ is a 2D game, meaning that the characters fight on a 2D plane. They can only go backwards or forwards. They cannot move freely around the environment. In Naruto Storm 4, the characters can freely traverse the battlefield. The 3D battlefield feels so free after being stuck in 2D fighting games for ages. To play a 3D fighting game feels like a whole new world opened up. Like, we've had 2D fighting games for so long now. It's been so long since we've had a 3D Mortal Kombat, I was seriously starting to think that 3D fighting games were impossible. But now playing Naruto Storm 4, I'm seriously asking, why aren't all fighting games 3D? This is so much better. Being able to move like you can in real life? Yeah, why did we think that this wasn't a thing we wanted in games? And you know, I'm really excited to see what Dragon Ball Budokai 4 is going to look like. Because that's going to be a 3D fighting game apparently. So I'm really interested to see what a modern 3D Dragon Ball fighting game will look like. I just hope it's good. Anyway, in Naruto Storm 4, the ability to just run around the battlefield instead of just forwards and backwards like in Dragon Ball FighterZ is so freeing. It also opens up so many more attack and defensive options. You can use strategic retreats, feints, and use distance to your advantage. While such tactics are also possible in 2D fighters, the 3D battle arena just allows you to take them to a whole new level. The 3D might make the game lose some mechanical depth, but I say it's a sacrifice that is beyond worth it. The last 3D games I played were from the Dragon Ball series. They were entertaining, but they were filled with glitches and seriously outdated. Seeing what a modern day 3D fighting game is like has been revolutionary for me. Like I said, I can't wait to see what Dragon Ball Budokai 4 is going to be like. I really hope it's good. Of course I don't hate 2D fighting games. I think for most of us, 2D fighting games have a nostalgic feel to them. But after spending so much time playing 2D Mortal Kombat, to finally move in 3 dimensions makes me feel like some kind of fighting god. When playing 2D Mortal Kombat or Dragon Ball FighterZ, you will instinctively want to jump and run left and right, but you can't because the third dimension just doesn't exist. It makes you feel extremely limited in your movements. For instance, jumping out of the way of attacks can only be done forwards or backwards, and the enemy normally still hits you because you don't jump back far enough or jump forwards far enough. The third dimension of Storm 4 just makes it feel so free and open. It's like I said, a whole new world. The win for this one is Naruto Storm 4. Now let's talk about cinematics. Both games have awesome animations. They both look so good. They look amazing. Using energy attacks in Dragon Ball FighterZ to blast away your opponent feels godlike. But performing jutsu in Naruto Storm 4 also feels godlike. I say it's a draw. Now let's talk about the chakra gauge and the ki bar. In Storm 4, each character has a limited amount of attack energy, or as it's known in the game, chakra. In addition to your basic punches and kicks, you can use chakra to perform extremely powerful attacks. However, once it's depleted, you must recharge your power. The depletion level is quite good. You can get around 4 smaller attacks, or 3 big attacks, before it's completely depleted and you have to recharge. This gives you decent attack power without giving you too much power. The fact you have to recharge chakra makes the game slightly longer, and it adds a level of complexity and strategy. You don't want to have to recharge your power while you're out of the substitution jutsu, and your opponent still has chakra left. If this happens to you, it would be easy to get trapped and lose a lot of health. This really gives the game some complex layers of strategy, as you have to constantly monitor your opponent's substitution jutsu bar, while simultaneously monitoring their chakra, to see when you can attack them with ease and when you're in danger. It actually connects to the anime really nicely, because in the anime, the ninjas are always having to take precautions that they don't run out of chakra in mid-battle. It kind of reminds me of Dragon Ball Z, the anime series, where they're monitoring each other's power levels to see how powerful they are and how much attack energy they have left. Kind of weird how that works out. That in a review about Dragon Ball FighterZ and Storm 4. Storm 4 is the one that reminds me of Dragon Ball Z. In the anime of Naruto, running out of chakra at the wrong time in battle can be a deadly event, and in the game, it can also have lethal consequences. At the same time, in the game, it doesn't take long to recharge your chakra, which keeps the battle moving quickly. It feels like the game's designers got the chakra depletion level and recharge time just right. So both games allow you to recharge your energy so you can perform enhanced attacks. However, in Dragon Ball FighterZ, the ki charge is pretty useless. The game is so fast you never really get an opportunity to charge your ki, because you're constantly either being attacked or attacking. You never get an opportunity to just charge up, because if you do, your opponent will instantly punish you. So in Dragon Ball Fighter, if you try and charge up your ki, your opponent is instantly going to attack you with the dash attack or a ki blast. You're never going to get a chance to charge up your ki. But this is okay, because punching the enemy also recharges your ki. But it just annoys me that there's an entire tool in this game that you just can't use in battle. If they're going to make the game so fast that you can't even use the charge mechanic, then why did they even program it into the game? Like, it's just really weird to me that you have this mechanic in your game to charge up your character's ki, and then you can't actually use it because the game's so fast that if you try and use it, you'll instantly be punished. This is especially annoying because, let's face it, one of the most awesome parts of Dragon Ball is when they're charging their ki energy for a huge attack. It would be awesome to do that in the game, you just can't. Naruto Storm 4 actually gives you a chance to recharge your chakra, because the gameplay is less fast, so the enemy cannot instantly punish you. In addition to this, the battlefield is bigger, so you can just retreat backwards, creating space between you and your opponent, giving you the opportunity to charge up. And this is what I mean when I say the game is more strategic, because you have the opportunity to decide to retreat and recharge your chakra when needed. You can decide whether it's worthwhile or not. If both you and your opponent have low chakra, then it is probably going to be worthwhile retreating so you can both recharge. If only you have low chakra, then you're going to need to retreat, but you're going to have to keep your guard up, or your enemy is going to look for an opportunity to punish you. And if your opponent has low chakra but you don't, then you can close in on them and try and attack them. But in Dragon Ball FighterZ, that level of strategy doesn't exist because you can't charge up. Your ki blast isn't affected by the amount of ki that you have, weirdly enough. So if you try and charge, they're just going to blast you with a ki blast. Or dash attack you. Anyway, it's just weird to have an entire mechanic in the game that you can't actually use. So for this one, Naruto Stormfall definitely wins. Running out of chakra at the wrong time can be scary, but at the same time, the game doesn't punish you too harshly for it, and you can recover from the situation quickly, especially if you have a substitution jutsu. But even if you don't, you can create distance and try and keep away from the enemy, while also blocking. This relatively good recharge time, combined with the pretty good depletion rate, gives you a good incentive to keep recharging your chakra throughout the battle. In some games, like Dragon Ball FighterZ, if the recharge takes too long or is too difficult to recharge, players may feel disincentivized to attempt to recharge their energy levels. However, I've found while playing Storm 4 that quite often the enemy and my character will recharge continuously throughout the battle, and often end up recharging at the same time. If you run out of chakra, you can always run to the edge of the battlefield and recharge, and even if the enemy chases you, it's relatively easy to put and keep sufficient distance between you and the enemy for enough time for you to recharge your chakra, or for your substitution jutsu bars to recharge themselves. In Dragon Ball FighterZ, you have an unlimited amount of special moves, in addition to your ki bar, which allows you to perform even more powerful attacks. Due to the fact you can still use energy blasts without recharging your ki, and the fact that normal attacks recharge your ki, combined with the extremely fast battle style, it never feels like you have a good incentive to stop attacking and recharge your ki. It always feels like you're about to get punished if you attempt to recharge, and it never feels worth it. Another factor that impacts all of this is the fact that the 2D battlefield and fast fight style of the game makes it feel like you cannot take a break to recharge your ki without getting immediately punished or speed blitzed. In Naruto Storm 4, if I run out of chakra, I can just run to the edge of the battlefield and take some time to recharge. And normally when I do this, the enemy does the same. This is because it's a 3D battlefield. It gives you more space to move and maneuver around. Whereas in Dragon Ball FighterZ, I don't feel as if I have any freedom of movement, and therefore it never feels safe to recharge. This is a shame because in the anime, one of the most awesome and famous parts of Goku's battles are when he's charging up his ki attacks. We love to see him scream as he builds up his energy, preparing to perform a ki blast, but in this game it just feels impossible. So for the energy recharge systems, I have to give the win to Naruto Stormfall. So now we've examined the games in detail, the question is, which one is the better game? After examining every aspect of the games, I've made my choice. The winner is Naruto Stormfall.
Believe it!
Honestly, I have to say, it wasn't even close. Naruto Stormfall is a far better game.
I won by a mile!
The winner is Naruto Stormfall.